This is Tim Davis. I'm the coordinator of the theater program here at BCTC. I'm also the director and the co-creator of the production that you're going to see tonight. It's called The Next Moment. This is a piece that was devised and created by myself, by former BCTC theater student and current UK theater professor Jeremy Gillette, by a number of our very talented and very creative theater and film students, and a couple of very dedicated faculty members, and a couple of artists from the community. So we've had a whole lot of input on this project. I also want to say a big thank you to Stephanie Fitch and the film program. Without their collaboration and their help, you would not be seeing this tonight. So thank you very much to those folks. And a big thank you to a number of artists from all over the United States who were very open and honest in sharing information with us about their struggle over these last 18 months. I would love to go through and name every one of those people, but that would add an extra 20 or 30 minutes onto the proceedings tonight, so I won't do that, but I will say a hearty thank you to every one of the artists, and these are not all theater artists, these are varied artists from all different walks of the art world: theater, film, television, music. We have playwrights, we have novelists, we have photographers, you name it. I want to say a big thank you to all of you who helped and participated in this in some way. Your openness, your honesty, and your willingness to share with us has been an incredible experience for not just my students, but for all of us. And we really, really thank you. I hope you enjoy what we have put together for you tonight. As always, a big thank you to the Humanities Division, to our Dean Melanie Williamson, to Angie King, to Denitra Wallace, and to all the folks in the Humanities Division. Big thank you. Thank you very much for all you do to support us. Tonight, we would also say that if you look on the BCTC Theater page where most of you accessed tonight's footage, you will see a link to the BCTC Foundation. You can link down in the drop box and hit BCTC Theater and donate any amount that you'd like, large or small. We would certainly be appreciative of anything that you can send our way, as it's been a while since we've had any box office receipts. But we certainly are very appreciative of any and all that type of support that we have gotten in the past 18 months from many of you and that we hope to continue to get. I think that's all I have to say for the night. I just want to say a big thank you to my cast and crew. And as always, with every production that we do this year, we'd like to dedicate this show to the memory of Kiwana Daniel Miller, who was one of our former students. We love you, Q, and you're in our hearts always. Thank you very much, and enjoy the show tonight.
Yeah, so I think it's been kind of beneficial. I've watched people who became very stuck in their ways and became very complacent, just struggle because they had worked themselves to a point where it was like, well, this is how I do it and I don't do it any other way. And the world came by and told them to go fuck themselves. And I think it's important that as artists and creatives that we never get stuck in our own process. We're always reevaluating what we're doing and looking at it and going, well, how do we do this better? How do we do this differently? Or what's the list of things that we need to improve on after every project? Where's my dissatisfaction at? And the pandemic, for me, made a lot of people look at that. A lot of people, especially in academia, because they have so much control over what is happening and how it's happening. This is how we do it here. And I kind of don't like that mentality. So the ability to go, well, we can't do it like that. So how are we going to do it? And trying to figure it out, which is our entire existence, is, hey, here's this thing that's not real and doesn't actually exist. How do we figure out how to make it and create it?
So how do you navigate a pandemic? Boy, that's a tiresome phrase, isn't it? How do you navigate? So artistically, what did I do? We had to shut down rehearsals for a show that my brand new theater company was just starting to do. And then we waited. And we talked about what audiences might want or might need during that time. And we had a lot of conversation, which was good. I mean, it stretches you artistically. I mean, your thoughts in ways that maybe you hadn't even considered. But we did a full show. Just recently, sold out every one, required vax cards and proof of testing, negative test, to be there. And we sold out every show. So I think people are hungry and they want to see something. They want to be entertained. They want to have it back. So we've got to figure it out.
I feel like there should always be a sense of the fight that is under the surface, the resistance, the defiance, the refusal to be silenced, the creative ways we come up with speaking truth to power. We like to talk about carrying on the legacy of the folks who came before us. Well, theater has never not needed to fight motherfuckers. I don't know the exact date of the very first theatrical production, but I'm fairly certain that the day after that production was the first time somebody declared theater to be evil or useless or dying or some combination, and it really hasn't stopped happening. So, bring the history, bring the strength of the folks who have come before us. When I hear an actor say, or when I hear an actor deliver a line, I don't know what I'm going to do next, I need to hear it in a way that finishes the line with, but I will figure it out.
Hi, this is Jerome Davis. I'm the artistic director of Burning Coal Theater Company in Raleigh, North Carolina. The pandemic has created a number of challenges for our organization, and I think it's opened up a number of avenues that may lead to future successes as well. One example is we have been forced to look outside of our venue to outdoor spaces where our audiences feel more comfortable. So we have performed an outdoor production of Evita in downtown Raleigh. We also found a way to broadcast.
It was really hard to try to find a positive or to try to see the other side in the midst of all of this. At the time, everyone was talking about the frontline jobs. And the frontline jobs were the ones that fed us, that kept us safe and treated our sick. And I think the first thought as an artist was, oh no, what have I done? Were my parents right when they pleaded with me to find a more stable career? Was society right when they scoffed at my career choice? What use am I to society at this point? I've made a terrible mistake. At the same time, what the world was left with was being at home consuming hours of television and movies and reading books. And no one may think of it this way while they're mindlessly binging scripted series or longing for a return to the theater, but it's the artists that dreamt up another world. It's the artists that write the stories. It's the artists that make the imaginative tangible. And it's the artists that granted us reprieve in dark times and took us away from the mundane. And although that doesn't put us on the front lines, that certainly makes us necessary.
Let us ask a question. What will the next days bring? Will we ever separate from the last 18, or is it destiny for this to be the next new normal? People like us, the creators of art, we watched the tides rise as the skies became dark and wondered, when will the next wave smash into this vessel? How many hopes and dreams will disappear from fear of winds coming to smash us into jagged rocks while we shed tears from ones we've lost? And yet, I know that if we look inside, if we can sift through all the stress and dirt brought on by these anxieties, we will see the next glimmer of hope, like a small seed planted, waiting to grow. How will you feel the next time you hear the words COVID-19? Will you scream out or get that pit inside your stomach? Will you run from it, or will you know that you have the strength to stomach it and make it all make sense? And since it's lost from your control, will you just find the flow and go? To find that peaceful river, the next calm water, the next story that's to be told, the next step you get to take onto that stage, the next page that's written in your script, the next scribble in your composition, the next voice that's spoken in the vocal booth, the next instrument you pour your soul into, the next color on the canvas, splashes of beautiful paint, fresh imagination, the next perspective? Will you feel what's real again and see the beauty all around because it really never left? We've been forced to feel things we've never felt, change and pain we've never held. So let us ask a question. Where do we go from here? What can you do the next time you feel that uncomfortable feeling? The next second, the next minute, the next hour, the next day, the next week, the next year. Will you allow that fear to control you? Or will you guide it into creating something special? The next moment is already here.
I was hired as community liaison 1 month before the pandemic hit.
I'm a hip-hop artist. I'm an actor, and I'm an influencer. The pandemic boosted my career.
I'm an actor, producer, writer, voiceover artist, and photographer.
I am currently working as a set designer in television.
I was and still am teaching at a small school in Middle Tennessee.
I teach and mentor the stage managers and K-12 higher education students at the university.
I was and still am an active recording artist. A radio personality at a media market station here in the Midwest.
I was and still am president of the board of directors for a large community theater, where I've served in that capacity since 2008.
I'm an operations supervisor for costumes at a major theme park.
Since the start of the pandemic, I've been involved in 4 virtual productions, a small film shoot, and 2 virtual readings and scripts in development.
The pandemic had very little effect on me besides being cautious and sensible around other people, and not playing a gig for over 13 months.
A PPP loan from the government allowed us to keep our staff paid through at least part of the summer, but by late June, all were on partial leave, if not completely furloughed.
We built a live music business during COVID.
Believe it or not.
We produced theater together.
I directed.
I was a performer. I'm also the director of operations for an arts and culture center.
He's also an MC for local burlesque shows.
And I also play in the Lafayette Orchestra.
Oh,
I don't know if that's applicable, but it's an art.
So we're heavily involved in the arts in a myriad of ways.
The past 20 months have been some of the hardest of my life. Yeah. The theater's all shut down and they still haven't reopened.
I created one-man solo plays about my experience growing up with a disability. Then the pandemic hit, and it all vanished.
Yeah.
Well, I used to be a photographer at the major theme park.
Oh.
And it used to be magical to see the faces of people meeting characters for the first time, young and old. But now because of COVID, we don't have that.
No.
So prior to the shutdown, I was promoting a film, auditioning, and performing all over New York City.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm resisting the urge to look too far ahead,
right?
Because it seems as though things will change on a dime, and you're right back in the shit again.
You got that right.
People are still living in fear.
Yes.
Right.
Camaraderie and interaction are vital to the creative spirit and a sense of inclusion.
In an instant, the pandemic ended all of that.
It isn't easy being an artist. For most of us, it's an avocation that feeds our souls but doesn't fill our pockets. To pay the bills, most of us have to work at something else. Who hasn't heard the expression, the starving artist? And how many aspiring actors have been dissuaded by their parents? Don't major in theater, kid. You can never make a living at it. But the arts still attract us, call us, draw us. If we could feed the muse any other way, maybe we would, but the stage, the screen, music, they call us back to them. Think of how big a part of your life the arts are. How many TV shows do you watch weekly? What about concerts? Theater productions, dance recitals, school plays, piano lessons, church dramas, marching band, community theater, movies, HBO, Showtime, Netflix, Hollywood, Broadway. What if it all went away?
That's what happened. In March 2020, the arts came to a screeching halt with the arrival of COVID. We have interviewed a number of professionals in theater and film to find out what their professional activities were before COVID, how COVID affected their lives and their work, and where they are now in their efforts to deal with the new normal. What you are about to experience is a company of actors portraying those professionals and interpreting their responses. The roles are varied. Some of the artists are college professors. Some are high school teachers. Some work at universities, some at community colleges, some at private schools, many at public schools and post-secondary programs.
Some of them are producers or people who work in community or professional theaters. Others are actors, performers. Some are equity and depend on their work for income. Others just act for the joy and challenge of the roles. And some of the artists are involved in photography, film, music, radio, writing.
But whatever their role, pun intended, they have been affected by the pandemic. Their lives have been turned upside down.
And now, a collection of woes from educators from across the country.
We are finally moving forward with in-person shows.
We might restrict the audience to faculty and students only.
The students are required to be vaccinated to be on campus. Masks are recommended, but that could all change before our first show in September.
We are planning to present one show in November, but who knows? We're working on protocols with the university, but I don't know them all yet.
I don't know any of them yet.
Right now, all of our shows are planned in person, but we're ready to pivot to streaming.
We're not doing our first show this season, and not outdoors. It's just too damn hot here, and it rains so much this time of year.
Our university is following the state protocols.
We are following the protocols! And we live in an unfortunate state with a governor who is refusing mask mandates.
If that man had not been our governor, I shudder to think what things would have been like here.
We're wearing masks for 3 weeks, requiring our actors to get tested weekly, but we're supposed to be performing in person, but I don't know how that's going to happen, quite frankly.
I'm so frustrated with our state and our administration.
They are making it harder for us to keep people safe.
We were told we cannot ask them about vaccinations.
We are not doing a show this semester. They told us definitively that if we perform in person, that everyone would have to stay masked, including the performers.
This whole thing is a fucking charade.
Anthony, a high school drama teacher.
I was, and still am, teaching high school theater in a small school in Middle Tennessee. I was in my 27th year when the pandemic hit. I've experienced nothing like it in those 27 years. Last year, we were in school, in person, for 1 month. Then we were all sent home for 2 weeks to go virtual. It didn't go well. It's hard to teach an invigorating theater class from 15 miles away. My classes became more like history lessons as we lost the fun aspects of the average drama class. The theater games, the duet acting performances. This scenario was repeated 3 times that year, each with a 2-week learning break. I think there have been many lessons learned about how important the in-person teaching experience is. Grades suffered when kids were left alone on their own devices, often home alone. They simply did not do the work. Hopefully, there will be a greater appreciation for the human teaching experience than there has been in the past. There is simply no substitute for being in a room with one's peers. The in-person experience should be valued more than ever. I mean, we were lucky here. We've not missed a production since the pandemic hit, but this isn't over.
Emily, a community college theater professor.
My mother used to work part-time with me as my musical director, seamstress, and set decorator. She was an elementary music teacher before she retired, and my students called her Mother Teresa, which was fitting. Mom had been living with breast cancer for 5 years. Soon after we got the news that school would remain online for the rest of the semester, we also found out that Mom mom's experimental drug was no longer working on cancer. The new drug had the unintended consequence of esophagus damage. My music teacher mother lost her voice. The radiation weakened her lungs. I would love to tell you that I used my pain to perform wit and won all the awards. I would love to tell you that my students sang to her over Zoom as she lay dying. As you probably know, though, one of the biggest side effects of the pandemic has been the confusion and loneliness, and the usual funeral fare didn't happen. We grieved with our families and from a distance. So many of us have lost loved ones during this pandemic. In an industry full of hugs and partner dances, cast parties, and circle time, laughter, and staged fights, we had to keep our distance, which was particularly painful. Every time I walk into my beloved theater, I find little reminders. Her handwritten notes on the soundboard, a bouquet of fake flowers she lovingly arranged, or her packets of peanut butter crackers in the dressing room that still haven't expired. My theater is inextricably tied to memories with my mother. I'm currently directing a show at my local community theater. It's been healing. I'm not sure I'm ready to stage anything at my high school theater yet. Sometimes being in the space is just too hard for me. I keep waiting for her to come around.
Katie, a university theater professor.
I teach and mentor the stage managers and K through 12 higher education students at the university. I'm also a professional stage manager. The pandemic made us stop, and that just does not happen in our industry, especially with the mantra, "The show must go on." But with no production schedule, we were able to turn our attention to more urgent, long overdue conversations that were happening. I know for us, it was our students that were the driving force, asking the hard questions about why our system is inherently racist. We, as a department, had to look at what we were doing to perpetuate the problematic conditions, what plays we default to, the artists that we reference, the conditions that we just take for granted as that's just the way it is in the industry. If we teach the next generation that the only way to tech a show is a 10 out of 12, then we will have a whole generation that thinks that that is the only way to tech a show.
The phrase 10 out of 12 refers to an equity mandate that states when actors are called in for 12 hours of rehearsal, they can only work for 10 of those hours. Technicians actually have a heavier schedule, working 12 out of 14.
So, we just added an extra day to the schedule, completely eliminating the need for that 12-hour day. But that reflection wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for the pandemic, and made us just stop, stay home.
Rick, a high school drama teacher.
In the spring, my world was turned upside down when I was diagnosed with a rare neurological condition, which ruined my summer, necessitated major surgery, and is still not quite under control. But I was also hired to teach theater at a high school in my hometown of Newport News, Virginia, where I grew up. So the pandemic accidentally brought me home. I left here in 1995, and I never thought I'd be back. For the first time, at least one of my kids is living near their grandparents. I've connected with friends from high school and am tentatively dipping my toes into the waters of the Richmond, Virginia theater scene. This is in no way how I thought I'd get home, but if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
There has been a reevaluation of how we spend our time, what is important to us, the stories we tell, who is getting left out. We need to ask ourselves, what stories we're telling, who is getting left out by the actual play that we choose or the structure of our process. We in higher education have an opportunity, a responsibility to affect change in the larger industry by what we implement in our training programs.
I hope this pandemic will give the theater community a chance to slow down and breathe. The show doesn't always have to go on.
We must protect ourselves and our fellow man. We must protect this precious gift, the gift of human interaction.
The ancient blessing or curse of "may we live in interesting times" has never been more true than the morass we collectively find ourselves in now. So your guess is as good as mine.
On March 12, 2020, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo suspended all Broadway theater productions. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Metropolitan Opera, Carnegie Hall, and the New York Philharmonic all announced that they would temporarily shut down. Cuomo also ordered an end to all gatherings of more than 500 people. That encompassed all 41 Broadway theaters. By definition, Broadway theaters must have more than 500 seats, and most have more than 1,000.
Mr. Cuomo said the Broadway restriction would go into effect at 5 p.m. that evening, forcing a temporary end to the run of all 31 plays and musicals currently in progress. From crowd favorites like Hamilton and The Lion King to new plays like Six, which was supposed to open that evening.
In Kentucky, 11 days later, Governor Andy Beshear ordered all businesses that were not life-sustaining to close.
People who run and or produce theater were out of work.
A conversation with Brady and Elsa, producers, directors, and performers in Louisiana.
We're involved in the arts in a myriad of ways.
Why don't you start with your perspective?
Sure. For me, it brought producing to a virtual standstill. Really eroded the cohesion of our community theater here. Really mourning the loss of time with actors that are aging. Not saying ones that are aging out of being able to perform, but you have a finite amount of time you can play certain roles, and we've lost some time. And for me, also, everything we've weathered has just made me so tired. I just don't know if I have the extra capacity to be creative. My instinct is not to say, oh, I want to put these feelings into art. My instinct is to say I don't have the extra capacity to make.
Yeah, I think all of that is true. And part of it is further compounded by the fact that there aren't a lot of professional performance activities in the area. And when those venues close, those people that have been participating in theater for the love of it, you know?
Yeah.
You get out the habit. We had a fairly vibrant community, lots of people engaged in the arts. It was really interesting when the pandemic first really got up to speed, because now there is no theater to do. And you can see people, and there seems to be this big dynamic push of, hey, let's do this show through Zoom.
Yeah.
And you can see people really experimenting with different ideas, really pushing the boundaries of technology-supported theater. But after a while, for some, the excitement, it went away. The thought of putting together a show through Zoom that you know wasn't going to do what your heart hoped it would. There have been some venues that have opened up, but the numbers haven't been great. And it makes you wonder, how long will it be, not only before the performers get back in the mix, but also to rebuild an audience.
We're talking about putting on a one-man show about suicide. It's about appreciating the little things in this world, you know, when everything's going to hell in a handbasket, what are things that you can grasp? And you know, we talk about it, but we don't actually act on it, right? And I think it's very valuable to explore why we're not actually doing it. And I think it's because we're navigating life and I hate this phrase, but what this new normal is supposed to look like. And I think until we can figure it out, I don't know when we'll get back to it.
Steve, managing director of a small professional theater in Virginia.
I had attended the annual Southeastern Theater Conference at the end of February 2020. By the end of that weekend, things were already looking grim. I had sent messages to my staff to purchase as much hand sanitizer and sanitizing wipes as they could find. On the flight to Louisville on Thursday, I noticed one mass traveler. On the flight back 4 days later, there were dozens. By March 13th, we had already begun to plan for a postponement of opening night and other possible impacts. By the time the governor announced his stay-at-home orders, we had planned to push off opening night for 2 weeks to help flatten the curve. Within a week, we knew that 2-week postponement was a pipe dream, so we announced plans to reopen in May and condense the rest of the shows through the rest of the summer. But little did we know it would be another 18 months before we had an audience in the theater.
Bob, actor, director, producer, and board member of a vibrant community theater in Kentucky.
We were in pre-production of a 10-minute play festival when COVID broke out. There was talk of canceling the Playfest, but ultimately we felt like we had a crew that could pull it off. And even if that didn't bear out, I would rather fall flat trying than not give it a shot. There was no pressure to make a profit on the show, and I didn't really think there was anything left to lose other than the opportunity and the adventure. The main point I keep coming back to throughout all of the virtual productions is that I'm not interested in what this isn't. I know we're not in a theater, or even altogether in the same space. We're not doing live theater productions as we've done them in the past, and I'm not trying to replicate or recreate or replace that. I'm more interested in what this can be, what this can mean, what this can do. I felt like we were on the ground floor of something that was necessary at the time if we wanted to work on our skills. And we had so much room for exploration. It really felt like we were riding a roller coaster and building it at the same time, and I mean that in a good way. And I feel like we're still in that space. And once the necessity goes away in terms of mask mandates and social distancing, the opportunity and the need will still be there. I believe there will be a need for this kind of work that is independent of the pandemic.
Bo, artistic director for a small professional theater in Kentucky, and John, artistic director of Lakewood Community Theater near Nashville.
When the pandemic hit, all productions screeched to a halt with no live in-person theater for over a year. I'm still struggling to keep our theater on stage. It's been hard. It's been difficult. As I articulated to a friend just yesterday, the pandemic has stripped all the fun and personal nourishment out of producing and left all the uncertainty and frustration. It's been hard.
In my little corner of the world, it's been a game changer. In March of 2020, it's like the world stopped spinning. And like so many other theater companies in the Nashville area and beyond, we had to shut ourselves down. We needed a better long-term financial plan, a new marketing strategy, and most importantly to me, a way to keep the theater arts alive without compromising the need to keep ourselves and our patron base safe. The first couple of months were the hardest, especially as we watched so many of our sister theater companies in the area fold. And quite frankly, were it not for a few generous angels who stepped in early on to help us, we may have also shut our doors permanently.
Our public health crisis has hit us in tandem with the reckoning on both issues of race and income equity. It has revealed a number of painful realities about how we have been living for decades, and how great changes will be needed to heal and restore the best of what we had, and to get rid of the worst.
We've also been able to plan and implement changes in our education program and begin the much needed work of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility that is far too lacking on the southern edge of the former capital of the Confederacy. We as a theater have changed in many little ways, but stayed the same as always in others.
I do find myself looking for more opportunities to open up the space and or to facilitate others, especially for those voices that have been excluded and marginalized.
It will continue to be a challenge. COVID may be here to stay in some form for some time, but that, in a way, is a good thing. Not the virus. The virus in itself has been heartbreaking to so many people. But it's good in a sense. It's good, at least for me. It's shown me how our little theater can be an example of how to create arts in a safe and effective manner, and how sorely needed the arts are right now. And it's shown me how directing and producing and theater in general can bring us all together, now more than ever.
We are trying to follow the new rules of polite society, but we're hindered because other venues in town aren't following the rules. I've had to lay off staff too. And all of these things contribute to the daily stress that makes it hard to say, hey, let's do a show, you know? Like, where does this land in the whirlwind of everything else that we have to contend with?
Do you remember after Katrina? We were living in New Orleans at the time. Do you remember how much we napped?
Oh yeah.
I feel that same level of exhaustion. I don't know that I have the extra capacity, the extra energy to be creative. I want to take any extra energy I have just to deal with whatever tomorrow brings.
We must, none of us, take anything for granted again. And we must all help each other out. Every day.
On Friday, October 8th, 2020, the Broadway League announced in a press release that it would continue the suspension of all ticket sales for Broadway performances in New York City through May 30th, 2021.
Finally, on August 3rd, 2021, the first Broadway play opened since the coronavirus pandemic shut down theaters in New York City in March 2020, with vaccinations and masks required for all audiences.
Almost 15 months with no live performances for actors and other performers on Broadway.
In other locations, actors were scraping by.
Before the pandemic, I was living the typical LA actor life. I was bartending 2 nights a week and driving all over LA auditioning.
It's been 2 full years since I've been able to create anything.
I'm a professional equity actor based out of New York, and the pandemic halted both my jobs instantly.
I was really struggling with drug addiction, and after 12 years in New York City and one very disastrous one in Los Angeles, I'd given up my pursuit of acting, writing, and directing.
I got creative in the house and I got very comfortable auditioning and performing from home. I guess this is the new normal.
We just need a place where we can feel normal for even just an hour or so.
The new normal. Zoom, Teams, virtual table reads, online shows. The new normal.
It's been really hard to find a positive in all of this.
Fran, an LA actor.
I am an actor. Before the pandemic, I was living the typical LA actor life. Commercials were my bread and butter, so sometimes I would drive across town, sometimes to wait for 45 minutes to head into a room, slate my name, then do some ridiculous audition. If I was lucky, there would be a script, but most of the time, it was just a look, or a reaction, and scene. And I was also a recurring co-star on a network procedural, so every 6 weeks or so, I'd get booked and go spend a day being a bitchy nurse. I thought I was hustling, but really, I was just driving. I thought about creating my own work, but I was busy and tired. When COVID hit, everything stopped. Commercial auditions all became self-tape auditions. They were weird when they happened in person, but at least we had a session director there telling us what to do and if we were totally off mark. All of a sudden, it all had to happen at home. Some casting directors requested to see our real homes. I was living in a shitty one-bedroom. There was no way I could show my home. When an audition came in, not only did I have to think about the script, but now I had to clean my home too. We were suddenly expected to be actors, directors, DPs, and editors. And I had to quickly learn the best way to set up. I spent big bucks on backdrops, lights, tripods, mics, and then I had to find a place to store it all in my shitty one-bedroom apartment. I have not booked one commercial since COVID. It's definitely been disappointing.
Chris, a New York actor.
March 12th. I got the call from Broadway not to show up. And an improv show I was in was canceled that weekend. There I was, sitting in my pod, watching the pandemic unfold through the news, Facebook, and friends through conversation. Not to mention a current political leader who was not equipped to help us as an American people. And from March to December, I spent time in my apartment taking every acting class via Zoom and... I also adopted a lovely Norwegian forest cat. And then Azriel, you know, like from the Smurfs. And I started maneuvering for things that were COVID compliant. I got lucky and managed to book a theater production of Noises Off in February of 2021, right when the vaccine was beginning to roll out. I thrived during the pandemic because, as an artist, it was the first time I didn't have to hustle for my money all the time. And while I wouldn't wish these circumstances on us again, I am grateful for the time that we otherwise would not have had.
Jesse and Brian, professional actors.
When I found out that COVID was going to change the course of my life, I was sitting by the pool enjoying a rare full day off without travel. I was the lead in the national tour of An American in Paris, and we were on a hiatus for a few weeks. With unemployment stretching on, my husband and I decided that it would be important for me to apply for a faculty position job. If I was lucky enough to get one, that would mean moving far apart. Finally, I found one, and it was 4 hours away from my husband, and I had to be in a mask the whole time. I'm definitely proud of this experience because it made me a more tolerant, patient, and open-minded artist. I'm grateful for that.
I was really struggling with drug addiction. And after 12 years in New York City and one very disastrous one in Los Angeles, I'd given up my pursuit of acting, writing, and directing. I moved back to my home state of Mississippi, went to treatment, got clean, and began to act again in the local community theater and small film projects. I even dusted off an old screenplay I'd been working on. I directed several plays in the local theater and my first short film. Then I decided I wanted to give my dreams another shot. I moved back to Los Angeles in September of 2019, 6 months back in California. As I was just ready to get myself back out there as an actor, we went on lockdown. And I had every intention of being more creative than ever. During that time, I dealt with depression, anxiety, and lack of motivation at times. But I realized what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to be a filmmaker. I want to be an actor. And honestly, I don't think I would know that had I not dealt with the experiences I have during the pandemic.
On March 12th, 2020, the same date that Governor Cuomo suspended all theater productions, AEG Presents and Live Nation Entertainment, the corporate giants that dominate the concert industry, suspended all North American tour engagements.
Across the country, artists in TV, film, music, and other venues We're out of work. The snap of a finger.
Jason, a photographer and radio personality from Mississippi.
And David, a morning radio personality from Ohio.
I photo shoot everything from landscapes to family portraits to dangerous snakes. No weddings, though. I had just finished a huge round of senior formal portraits when COVID broke out. What would have been a hot, busy, and lucrative spring of photo sessions came to a cold and solid stop. No proms, no cap and gown events, and no Easter shoots. Talk about bleak. My landscape and still life projects kept my skills warm and my wallet empty while I wondered how the fuck this was gonna play out, and for how long. Much of 2020 had me broke. And to be honest, things are still shaky right now. As a radio broadcaster, I was assigned as an emergency response entity in the county, so that work was steady. However, no remote promo events occurred. This job has kept my head above water financially, but my life for the past 18 months has been disorienting.
As far as radio goes, the COVID-19 pandemic made us realize a lot of people just don't have radios in their homes anymore. The only place a lot have them are in their cars. When the shutdown happened, they weren't driving as much anymore, and we realized the importance of stressing listening through smart devices such as their phones or Alexa. It was difficult doing a morning drive radio show when there was hardly anybody driving anywhere. So now we just pound home the app and smart device listening.
Jim and Michael, both working musicians.
I was, and I still am, an active recording artist. And since the majority of my recording work is done solo, a lot of that's continued as before. But as a performing musician, that has dried up completely. Which is especially frustrating to me because I primarily play in a group setting. My main group didn't so much as rehearse for 19 months, nor did any of the other group settings. And believe me, it showed when we returned. That, combined with social distancing and limited portability, have made it more challenging economically for big clubs to host us. So we have less places to play. But hopefully, that'll all change soon.
Yeah, 2021 certainly wasn't a banner year for live music. You're on to do a show, then you're off. It's canceled, rescheduled, canceled. All those tickets purchased so optimistically only to have the show pushed a year. The big guys, the Stones, Guns N' Roses, they can afford to enforce some pretty strict guidelines, and they do. Vaccines, twice weekly tests, closed backstage and dressing rooms, but the little guys are not so lucky. We are at the mercy of club owners and greedy promoters. And the guys in the band all take COVID safety very seriously. We have buried friends and family, and we have seen this thing shut down our business. But still, what do you do when you've traveled 1,500 miles only to discover there's no mask requirement for the audience? You do the gig and split. No partying, hanging, and drinking with the locals on this run.
David, a mind coach and performing strongman.
I went from being elbow deep in raw chicken at a fast food joint to being a motivational speaker and traveling strongman. Then I was being told I was lucky to do this as a job, and for years I'd say, you're right, I am lucky. I'm just the luckiest dude to ever scare people with a piece of steel. That's awesome, I'm lucky. Then one day I read a quote that said, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. It's the foundation of what I do. But how could we have been prepared for how COVID would affect our lives? My entire 2020 was canceled. The pandemic completely shut everything down and forced me to change my approach on what I was doing and how I was doing it. I did one rescheduled show in August, and then I did a few virtual events, but those didn't pay where I was used to getting paid a considerable amount to get on stage. It really hamstrung my livelihood.
Beth, a playwright and novelist.
As an author, well, I've had to contend with publishing delays and general industry upheaval. My process of creating wasn't affected. As a playwright, the rug was pulled out from me entirely. Productions canceled, theaters shuttered, and it became unclear when there might be somewhere for any new scripts to go. As a theatrical scout for a licensing company who was used to seeing 4 or 5 plays a month, I was completely furloughed from my position. And that's just the external stuff. The pandemic impacted my work by shifting my day schedules, running me in emotional circles, robbing me of childcare, changing my notion of safety, and causing so much internal upheaval that it is absolutely impacting what I create and how I create it. I'm thinking much more deeply about my work, all of my work.
Some artists have managed to thrive despite the woes of the last 18 months. Take Walt, a rapper, influencer, and actor from New York City.
Pandemic, it boosted my career. I was stuck at home, a little stressed. Everything just seemed uncertain. So I turned to what I know best to keep me free, and that's creating. Now, I already knew how to produce, so I continued making music for my small fan base. But then, I saw this video on a new social media app called TikTok, and how it was still in its beginning organic reach phase. Meaning, if you put out great content, then the algorithm will push your videos out to millions of potential fans. And I was growing frustrated with the other social media sites because it was really hard to grow my fan base. I felt like I was just turning my wheels without going anywhere. So on TikTok, I decided to post some older previous videos from YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, just to see how they would do. And there was a little growth. So I kept grinding. Then, one night, I decided to post a video of me reacting to a man hitting a cobra in the head. Knocking it out. So, I went to sleep, woke the next morning, and checked. And the video, it went viral overnight. I had 2 million views and gained 16,000 followers. That was more than the other platforms combined. Next thing I know, SportsCenter reached out to me and asked if I was the creator of the Jordan versus LeBron James rap series. I said, yes, I am. They said, well, we would like to feature these across our platforms. In my head, I'm like, hell yeah. I was so excited, I posted a screenshot letting everybody know. Next thing I know, people hit me up like, yo, your video's on SportsCenter Instagram. My videos, it went viral. I had hundreds of DMs telling me how dope the series was. But I was still looking for ways to combine rapping and acting. But now I wanted to add some comedy in there because comedy does great on TikTok. So I came up with this thing called the Weird Bar series, where I would come up with the funniest, weirdest lyrics. That blew me up on the app. I gained 2 million followers in a couple of months. Now, I get recognized in public, and people ask me for pictures and autographs.
And Mike and Aaron from Lexington.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Erin.
And we built a live music business during COVID.
Believe it or not, we decided to have a New Year's Eve Facebook Live event where we could play music and celebrate Mike's birthday.
She said, what do you want to do for your birthday? I said, to play music live somewhere. So all we could do was play live right there from home.
And our friends from all over participated. It was really cool. It was a feel-good moment because the pandemic had just worn us down. It had worn everyone down, whether you're in the arts or not. COVID wore us down. But this gave our friends from all over the world a chance at positivity, something to brighten their day. I like to think.
That's a good point to interject here. It's common today for people to talk about normalizing talk about mental health. So one of the things we did was take advantage of being able to talk to counselors via Zoom, individually and as a couple. It was tremendous for us in helping to find the positive side of all of this. Like a lot of folks, we went through some pretty dark tunnels.
And I think people recognize how important the arts are. We turn to the arts to help with our mental health and just brighten our outlook on things. And for us, this is what we do. We had to get our art out there.
And we work this as a job. This isn't just a hobby for us. In the last 7 months, we've played close to 50 gigs.
It was weird at first. I'm not gonna lie. When we had our masks on, unloading, setting up, all up to the point where we started singing. And then we just kept going and going and building our business with our band.
And we work this as a job. This isn't just a hobby for us. In the last 7 months, we've played close to 50 gigs.
I think it's about human connection. People are really eager just to have that human connection back.
We came up with creative solutions to these problems, because that's what we do.
Creative people doing creative things. The actors, dancers, musicians, artists, all being creative and doing what they do.
On August 3rd, 2021, Broadway began to reopen. The first play, Passover, a modern twist on Waiting for Godot, was sold out for its first preview at the August Wilson Theater in Manhattan.
Disney's Aladdin, which had been closed since March 2020, reopened on September 28, 2021 at Broadway's New Amsterdam Theater.
Things are not back to pre-pandemic condition, but they have turned a corner. There's energy and excitement in the reopenings and the return to this new normal.
The show doesn't always have to go on. Our bodies are not invincible, and we don't need to keep traditions like the 10 out of 12s alive when it risks our physical and mental health. When we feel overwhelmed, we need to cancel rehearsal and rest. Other times, we need to feel free to turn on the ghost light and wait for our hearts to heal.
It allowed us to take a deep dive into who we are, what we're all about, and how we plan to move forward.
All meetings are necessary, but not in person. Across town when there's other work to be done. There is an appreciation for technology used well as a tool.
There was a sense of being under siege, like we were all huddled together remotely, trying to support each other as best we could. I believe that sense of camaraderie lingers.
I mean, we only have one life to live, you know? So here we are. We think we get this in our head that we have to do this or that for a living, and life is just passing us by. I think what the pandemic did was add a sense of priority. Like, what is important to me? Who is important to me? My family, my job that I love. There was this shift in priorities, and I hope that stays.
What are some positives that I think will come of all of this? Nothing.
My hope coming out of this is it's given us a chance to reflect on the kind of art we want to produce as a theater, to do more challenging work, to do shows outside of our comfort zone.
Things are getting better out there little by little. Shows are coming back. People aren't taking it as for granted as they used to. People are following the rules without griping as much. It's a lot easier for us to be magical for our guests when we're not being screamed at.
And a positive that I see in terms of the arts in general, opportunity. Like none I've seen in my lifetime. Opportunity and desire, means and motivation. The numbers and momentum for a true revolution. For the swinging of many pendulums, for the smashing of so many norms. Not that I'm trying to paint a rosy picture of the road ahead, but I am encouraged by the potential and possibilities of this time, and I look forward to the evolution of how life reflects art and art reflects life.
There's this new accessibility to the decision makers now, and quite frankly, there's a fuck it, let's do this attitude. COVID made it so clear that life isn't guaranteed, and so many people lost their lives. So I feel like it's my responsibility to make the best of mine, to just go for it, you know? Because I'm still here, because I still can. So let's not waste this shot, right?
I have faith that we will get to where we need to go. I'm just not sure how soon we will get there.
I wrote and reflected a lot about what it was like to be so viscerally living through history. Truly, we are living through the chapter of a history book that future students will read. It's hard and it's scary. It's also kind of incredible.
The pandemic forced us to face the reality of the inequity in the arts and community and to stop accepting excuses.
Yes.
It forced us to confront the inept policy and policymakers that promote, encourage, and simply ignore the lack of inclusion, diversity, and equity in the arts as a whole.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It has also revealed a widening divide between haves and have-nots.
Right.
Between Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
Between people who want things to stay the same and people who want things to change.
Right.
Yeah. And it was sitting with these thoughts of our place in this world and what's to come of this world post-pandemic that prompted the discussions of the inequities, not only in our communities, but in the education as a whole.
Yes.
Absolutely. People of color have had the time to run the numbers and begin to identify just how systematically we've been left out of the decision-making and production and performance process in the arts. Whistleblowers demanded that people of color have had an integral part in the production process from start to finish.
As they should.
These demands prompted large equity houses down to small community theaters and educational institutions across the nation to identify and change their outdated structures and race/gender dynamics.
Yes.
Performance allyship was denounced for the sake of integrity and equity in the arts. And in this light, those months of reflecting in the silence has made many of us speak up.
We start by asking ourselves questions like, who is being left out? Who could use the help?
Right.
Would it be so bad to just try?
No.
I believe only from this place of interrogating our blind spots can we actually move forward.
Exactly.
There we go.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because we've all kind of been left to our devices and learned that we can do this, we learn the value of ourselves,
Yes.
and we learn the value of the arts.
Exactly.
And I think that's important.
Yeah,
Very much.
absolutely. And how do we move forward from here? Well, I think that we're doing it the best that we can.
Right.
Yeah. There's no rule book for this, as in life's many other moments. I think that we should continue to move forward and stay in the light and do as much good as we can. This pandemic has been hard. Hell, the world is hard.
Right.
And the world could use a little more good.
Exactly. Yes.
I think that all those people who have found this new courage and those who have decided to become actively more unified with their fellow humans will continue to carry these attitudes into the future.
That's right.
And whatever our next moves are, those plans will be made from a standpoint of how can we make the world a better place?
Yes.
Rather than how can I get more for myself?
Right.
You know?
And for those who craft and create, who raise their voices and move their bodies to shift the sands of time, I encourage you to embrace the opportunities ahead.
Yeah.
And I hope that you find the positives and the promise that is sometimes hard to see in the midst of darkness.
Right.
Amen.
And don't let the bastards get you down.
Okay, everybody, that's 10 minutes.
Thank you, Jen.
Jerry, why don't you tell our audience that story you told me about those dreams you were having?
My name's Jerry. I'm an associate professor of English and literature at Bluegrass Community and Technical College. During the pandemic, after about 4 or 5 months, and I simply shut down. I sheltered at home, and I ventured out only to buy groceries. And the days just kind of congealed into this relentless cycle of wakefulness and sleep. Finally understood what Samuel Beckett meant when he said the sun shone, having no alternative on the nothing new. I used to have these failure dreams of not completing my undergraduate theater degree, and they started returning with more and more frequency and intensity. And I figured if I was going to follow my bliss, I may not get another opportunity to do it. So I took a leap of faith, and with a nod to Derek Mahone, I think everything's going to be all right.
I'm an English and Humanities professor at BCTC. COVID forced me to develop new strategies and skills for teaching, just trying to reach my students. I felt so off balance most of the time. But COVID has also provided me some clarity. I don't just want to be involved in theater arts. I need to do this. At age 66, I don't feel I have the luxury of putting off my opportunities. I have a greater sense of my impermanence, and I want to grab every chance that I get. My name is Kathy, and I love performing.
I'm Vaughn. COVID has affected my life in a myriad of ways. Taking away family members, keeping us from seeing the birth of new ones, and more. But it also let me branch out and find a love for theater. Before COVID started, I started to give up on the arts. But as it turns out, all I needed was a pause to find my own.
I'm currently a BCTC theater student, but I almost can't be a BCTC theater student because of COVID. COVID closed the US Embassy, which has almost prevented me from coming to the USA because they don't provide for me a visa. I lost a lover due to the constant heart issues. Acting saved me from being overwhelmed and miserable. Theater has become the driving force of my life. Playing other characters makes me happy because it is escape from my current reality. I'm Eugene, and I'm an actor.
I'm Stephanie. And people would always say, why don't you take a break? Stop doing shows back to back. Just take a breather. And so I did. One long, continued breath. And I waited.
I'm Nathan, a film student at BCTC. The fleeting nature of life has never been more apparent to me. I found myself constantly thinking about what I haven't done and what I wanted to do. And in this time when everything seems so terrifying and uncertain, that fear of unfinished business gave me the strength to say yes. Rather than turning down opportunities for the fear of failure, I charge on, pushing my boundaries and trying to grow. COVID has taught me that I can only succeed if I try, that nothing lasts forever, and I am not the sum of my failures.
My name's Kevin. I have anxiety. Throughout the pandemic, I've had the worst anxiety I've ever had. I've never stopped working, in stores, surrounded by the public every day, stressed, filled with anxieties. We bought our first home. After a long year caring for our senior dog, Samson, we said goodbye in May. But I've also been creative. I've recorded 2 full-length albums. I've learned a lot about myself. I'm in a fresh headspace now. I'm really, really happy that better days have finally arrived, and I'm looking forward to the future.
My name is Haley. During the pandemic, I lost my father. I moved twice, once to a new city. I graduated cosmetology school, and I enrolled in college to do film and theater. COVID shined a light through the cracks of my life that I tried so hard to fill on my own, but I never could. And without the time COVID gave me to heal from my losses, and without my struggles with isolation and grief, those cracks would have expanded and crumbled my world around me. COVID has taught me to appreciate the things I have, and it has pushed me to chase my dreams of performing.
COVID has not only given me, but others time to reflect on who they are and what type of person they're striving to be in life. I wish I could say I figured it out in the time I had, but I haven't. I sometimes ask myself if I would be on a better or worse path if it weren't for COVID. But hey, there is no path without a puddle or a rose without a thorn. If it weren't for COVID, I would have never have gotten to meet so many wonderful people that have gotten me into the world of acting. So, who am I? I'm still figuring that out. Oh, and I'm Jackson.
My name's Grayson, and the last few performances of my high school show were canceled because of COVID. We were doing Seussical, and I was playing Gertrude McFuzz. She was one of my dream roles. My entire life in high school revolved around theater and dance, so when I got word of the cancellation, it felt like my world was ending. But then I started at BCTC as a theater major, and later I got accepted into the Disney College program, and the world came back to life.
I'm Hannah. I was a high school senior in 2021, which means I looked forward to what you get to do as a senior. I didn't go to school in person that entire year. COVID changed a lot for me, especially as a dancer on my high school dance team. It made me appreciate every moment that I was able to have with my team. We only performed around 3 times in front of a crowd, and we were socially distanced and had to wear masks the entire time. That was really weird for me, considering I had been dancing for 14 years.
I was at my state debate tournament up in Louisville with the state speech tournament the next day. And then we got a text while we were out in dinner, and they said things were shutting down left and right, and we were to go back to the hotel and await further instruction. And when we got back to the hotel, there were workers in masks cleaning just about every surface all over the hotel. We finished up the debate portion, they had us go home, and we waited and waited. COVID took away my award ceremonies, my graduation ceremony, and it put my dad in an oxygen machine. And I don't know if it was because of my time in speech that kicked off my interest in performing, or maybe I felt I was trying to take back something that I felt COVID took from me. But I went to acting at BCTC almost immediately. My name is James. I'm a theater student at BCTC, and I'm trying to finish what I started.
Oh, hi. Hello. I first started here at BCTC with 2 goals in mind. First, to study theater with the intent of becoming a voice actor. And second, to force myself out of the shell I had been hiding in my whole life. Unfortunately, the virus forced me back into that same shell I had been trying to get out of. But it also showed me a few important things as well. My shell is safer, quiet, calm, and all around more comfortable and less complicated. My name is Tim. I'm a theater student here at BCTC, and I'm just trying to learn.
I'm Abby. I'm studio manager at Nitrosonic Studios, which was a position I was supposed to take in spring of 2020. That transition was pushed back considerably since a music recording studio is not an essential business. So I spent another 1.5 years working 90-hour work weeks in a job that I hated, which I guess makes me one of the lucky ones that still got to work, but really made me realize how miserable I was and really cemented the fact that where I belong is in my studio. I belong in a career where I'm surrounded by the creation of art.
I really started to feel like I was improving myself mentally and really pursuing acting as a career. But then the pandemic hit, and all that went out the window. As the months went by, my mental health worsened, and I didn't know what to do next. But then something just clicked. I'm not giving up on myself. I will pursue a career in acting, and I will make something out of it. My name is Jake, and I'm an actor.
My name is Emmanuel. And when the pandemic hit, my life as a father and director at a community center continued on. Lots of changes and challenges, but it continued on. My life as an actor stopped, suddenly and completely. Although my passion and love of acting burned bright as ever, in the beginning I began to lose hope. See, while the pandemic provided time for some to truly begin creating and producing their own works, I lacked the time and creativity to do the same. Ironically, during this time, as I bit enviously witnessed the creative geniuses, the beautiful minds of my fellow artists as they took the time that this tragedy has provided them to do some amazing things, the embers of hope began to burn in me once again. See, because I realized that out of this storm will come a flood of wonderful and amazing works that will require talent such as myself to help bring to life and to share with the world.
Before COVID hit, I was recovering from a stroke. I was a college student, and I was working myself to death. I grew up with a disability, and I always thought that meant that I had to work harder than everybody else to make it, but that just led me to blood clots in a hospital bed. But COVID gave me an extra long time to recover, and that gave me an extra long time to think about what I really wanted to do with my life. So, to follow a childhood dream, I enrolled in the BCTC film program. And I even got my first role after an actor dropped out due to COVID. And I found my passion because of it. My name is Nick. I'm a student. Now I can finally say I'm an actor.
Where do we go from here?
What can you do the next time you feel that feeling?
The next story that's to be told.
The next step you get to take onto that stage.
The next voice that's spoken in the vocal booth.
The next instrument you pour your soul into.
The next color on the canvas. The next second.
The next minute. The next hour.
The next day.
The next week.
The next year.
Will you allow that fear to control you?
Or will you guide it into creating something special?
The next moment is already here.
They'll tell you it's hopeless. They'll say we're going down. They'll sell you distraction. Keep your head spinning round. Let your heart take a breath, a break from the bad news. There are angels among us. I've seen their tattoos. Find a way to lay your burden down. You know it's going to be okay. Sometimes all you need to carry on is one good day. One good day. One good day. One good day. I need to slow it down. Get away from the gray and grind. So where the hate turn the key. Turn your